Hello everyone. Today I have come to discuss Robert Browning's My Last Duchess. Before I move on to the main text, let me tell you Robert Browning popularized the dramatic monologue form. His other poems like Fra Lippo, Andrea del Sarto, A Grammarian's Funeral are all examples of dramatic monologue form. The main purpose is to throw light into the consciousness, to take a critical moment out of the person's life and then permit the speaker to speak for himself. And in the course of doing so, his whole course of existence is brought to limelight. Generally, a fictional or historical character is taken for the purpose, who speaks for himself throughout the poem and thus reveals his own personality. The basic trait of dramatic monologue is thus lyrical strain, abrupt beginning, a solo speaker, passive listener, and a psychological analysis. And if you look at My Last Duchess, it is perhaps the best example of dramatic monologue form, which incorporates almost all the traits of dramatic monologue. In this poem, the speaker is the 5th Duke of Ferrara, Alfonso II, who talks to an emissary of a foreign count whose daughter's hand is being sought for marriage by Duke. Here, he is displaying the portrait of his deceased wife or his dead wife, who is supposed to be Lucrezia di Medici, who died in 1561. As the text unfolds, you will find the complacent egotism of an aristocrat who has never paid respect to the graciousness and innocent nature of his wife. And when she fails to comply to his will, this sadist and jealous duke puts her to death. The poem begins with the lines, "That's my last duchess," painted on the wall, looking as if she were alive. The event has already begun. The poem starts in the middle, where we get to know that the Duke is displaying the portrait of his wife, of his late wife, to an emissary or the ambassador of the foreign count. This poem is also an example of ekphrastic kind of poem, that is related to the work of art. And in this case, it dramatizes the viewer's response to the work of art. It is a kind of violent representation of the cruel intention of the Duke. That is, it is a rivalry between image and the words. It tries to bring forth the violent nature of the Duke. He talks about that's my last duchess. That's. So when he's saying that means he is pointing to the portrait as an object of wonder, something to possess and then show off. Then he also talks about my last duchess. It seems that he is planning to have series of wives, something he hints to the ambassador even. And when he talks about as if, it seems that initially he is trying to compliment the work of art by the painter Fra Pandolf. But as you notice that he is also hinting at the death, that is as if she were alive. So he is more focusing on the death aspect. So you see, here you can see that he is talking about his wife as if she is some kind of property which should be displayed and shown off to others. He is talking to the emissary, but the important fact is that throughout the poem, the emissary does not talk. One of the important character of dramatic monologue is there is always an implied action and an implied conversation. So the action and response of the listener is known through the speaker's speech himself. So when he says that, will please you sit and look, we come to understand that there is some listener and he's asking the listener to sit and look at the portrait. It is also very noticeable that when he is drawing the curtain from the portrait, he is trying to boast about himself that he is the one who controls the portrait, and he is the one who decides that who should view the portrait of his wife. So the point is that he considers his wife as something to possess, to show to others only when he wants to. That is, it reveals the dominating nature of Duke, who is willing to control his wife even after her death. Next, you find that he is talking about the list of things that has always amused his wife. For example, he talks about the spot of joy on her cheeks. He assumes that while painting, the painter Fred Pandolf must have had a chance to flirt with her, and at that moment, her wife must have blushed, which gives her that depth and passionate look on her face, which is clearly visible from the portrait. Here the Duke finds it very repulsive. He feels that his wife should blush only in his presence. So, since he assumes that his wife must have blushed in front of the painter, he considers it as something which should not have been done by his wife. So, he considers it to be a very trivial act from his wife. Then he goes on to list on the things that has always offended the Duke, but that has always overjoyed his wife. For example, the joy at their marital sex, or the way the sun goes down, or when some officious fool brings some cherries to her, or the white mule she rides on the balcony. So these are the things which has always amused the Duchess. But it seems that the Duke is hurt, the Duke feels offended. He finds it repulsive that his wife is amused at such petty things. He feels that his wife has jeopardized, his wife has tarnished his 900-year-old fame to very trivial aspects of life. That is, she has compared his age-old fame to very trivial gifts. The way she receives others, the way she blushes at others, makes the Duke feel that she is faithless, because he feels that her gaze travels everywhere. That should be avoided, or that should not be done by his wife. So you see, the important point is that the Duke is trying to project his wife as someone who is very charming, very lively, very cheerful. In a way, he has indirectly brought the bride side of his wife, who has married to a cruel, a greedy, a jealous, an egoist husband. So the point is that Duke has considered his wife's action as very trivial in nature, something which has crossed the boundary, which has missed the mark. So according to him, who would stoop to blame to such trifling? And then he goes on to say that he commands and all the smiles stops together. So the final action, the wife's smile, this last Duchess smile condemns, is an act of condemn in the Duke's eyes. So he goes on to kill her. After describing this heinous past, he immediately comes to the present. You see, the important fact of this portrait is that he has drawn a curtain over the portrait. It can also be assumed that a veil is also drawn across the face of the Duchess so that it not only hides the portrait behind the curtain but also hides the heinous crime or the cruel past of the Duke himself. So when he talks about the joyous nature of wife, at once the viewers come to know the contrasting nature of the jealous husband. By the time the poem ends, we find that he somehow tries to convince or somehow tries to point the emissary that he wants his wife to be calm in nature, not to be overjoyed at very trivial things. So, by hinting at the dowry, he asks the emissary to come down and discuss for the future prospect. And while moving down, we come across a very rare bronze statue of Neptune who is tending a sea creature, a seahorse. The image is like that. A dominating character is tending a gentle creature. So if we look at Duke, he himself is one who thinks that his wives are like precarious objects who should be collected and then they should stand still till they are exchanged for something new and better. So the entire poem is a kind of friction between representation and reality, life and death. And in the course of the speaker's speech, the gruesome character of Duke is gradually revealed. It portrays the egoist nature of character of Duke, which is filled with jealousy, which is out of his arrogance, perhaps which also marks his low esteem. So, coming to the end of the poem, you can find that My Last Duchess is a kind of character study which tries to bring the jealous, cruel, possessive, egoist character of the Duke. Thank you.